Hello everyone, today we are looking at a game from 1998 with the white pieces GM Konstantin Sakaev, who was rated 2620 at the time, and with the black pieces Alexander Morozevich, who was rated 2590. This game started off as a Slav defense. Now, after D takes C4, black has the obvious idea of just solidifying his newly captured booty by playing b5 and just keeping the pawn. Alright, so this is why a4 is often played by white, although gambit lines are possible with e4. But mostly you will see the move a4 played so that white can be assured of recapturing the pawn on c4. Of course, the demerit of playing d takes c4 is that black does give up his point in the center at on d5. So we make this trade-off by playing d takes c4 and bishop f5 here. Okay, and this is a similar strategy in the Caro-Kann defense. That's why I suggest, if you don't have a lot of time to study a whole bunch of different openings, try to economize your preparation by playing openings that you can use that have similar ideas. So for example, you play the Slav defense against d4 and queen pawn openings, and you can play a Caro-Kann against e4, and you have a lot of similar themes and save yourself a lot of time. Here, after bishop f5, instead of playing the straightforward e3, which is perfectly normal, Sakaev chose the more aggressive knight e5. Why is knight e5 more aggressive? Well, the idea behind moving the knight, of course, besides attacking this pawn, is to play the move f3. So the knight on e5 clears the way for f3 and e4. And the argument from white is to basically drive black's pieces away from the center of the board, and sometimes if black is not careful, this light square bishop can often become a spectator for long periods of time in the game and get locked away on h7. Another interesting line here also is after the move e6. So say e6, f3, white goes on with his plan, bishop b4. There's an interesting piece sacrifice here. And this variation has been played many times and definitely favors the more prepared and skilled player here. Alright, this position is equal, as black definitely has compensation for being a piece down, as he has 3 pawns for the piece. In that game, Morozevich did not play e6. He played another main line, which is knight bd7, attacking the knight. White preserves pieces and captures his pawn. Queen c7. This prepares the central break of e5. g3, preparing, of course, the fianchetto of the bishop on g2, but also containing the idea of bishop f4 hitting the queen at some point. There's e5, d takes, knight takes, and there's bishop f4. Knight drops back as black is in an uncomfortable pin here. Bishop g2, and then f6. Now, this is actually like a really old move. If you look at the World Championship matches between Alexander Alekhine and Max Erva, like in 1935, in the rematch, there was a lot of games in the Slav. So if you want to look at like some early Slav development, you should look at those matches you'll see some of these moves in there. Right, so all those years, these players were playing these similar ideas. Okay, so Alekhine actually played this move f6, but for some reason the move f6 wasn't viewed as being that good. All right, but again, back then they didn't have computers as such, you know. So, but here we have all these years later, Morozevich playing this move. So castle was played, and then Morozevich played knight c5. More like traditional is the move bishop e6, and as you can see, it kind of forces things here by double attacking this knight right here. And so play often would go knight takes e5, f takes e5, bishop e3, bishop c5, and then say queen c1. All right, and this is like traditionally a little bit better for white. As you can see, it's not a big advantage for white, but you can see black has this isolated pawn in the middle, and his position is white's position is very good. It's not like black is going to be threatening, to win material or anything like that, or even losing for that matter. But this is one of those positions where white would tend to grind his opponent down. So you can see why Morozevich would avoid this traditional continuation. So instead of going into bishop e6, he had a different, sorry about that, after castle, instead of playing bishop e6, he had a different idea in mind and played the move knight c5 here. Okay, white just continued on with his plan, e4. Now this move is kind of double-edged because yes, he's gaining time hitting the bishop, but keep an eye on the d4 square here. Okay, so bishop g6, bishop takes e5, okay, and f takes e5. All right, so again, these are type of positions Morozevich thrives in. Morozevich gets the bishop here, all right, but Sakaev is counting on basically running through black center with f4, just advancing those pawns on the king side. So Sakaev didn't just give up the bishop here for no reason. He has a definite plan, in that white's king is still like stuck in the middle. Black's king is still stuck in the middle of the board somewhat, and so he's gonna rapidly open up the position here. So f4, rook d8. So here you can see black exploiting the position of the queen. Queen g4. And now e takes f4, g takes f4, and now Morozevich plays this annoying move knight d3. All right, so here it's like Morozevich is playing very, kind of unorthodox chess here. This king is just sitting in the middle of the board, but there's no concrete way for white to really make something happen. And not only is his king in the middle of the board, but he's creating threats at the same time. So there's ideas, for instance, a bishop c5 check, and then just picking up the exchange after knight f2. So king h1, this is a move that white doesn't really want to make. He's trying to attack, but he's forced to make this move. Bishop c5, f5, and now just simply bishop f7 by Morozevich, attacking this piece right here. Sakaev played the move e5, and what this does is, of course, keeps an eye on the knight here, and of course threatens to advance even further. This is amazing. Again, it looks like the rules of chess are being broken. Like, how can how can black be okay with this king in the middle of the board like that? This pawn is hanging. And it looks like you could just take here, right? With queen takes g7. However, after rook g8, queen takes h7, black simply just plays rook d7. And there's really no, white is in the world of trouble here. This knight is, remember, this knight is still hanging. What do we do with this knight? Like, let's put it back on a3. And there's really two strong moves here. There's queen e5. Okay. And there's just simply knight f2 check. Just winning the exchange. But queen e5, very strong also. Let's say, for example, f6 here. And now you play knight f2. Check. There's no choice. Rook takes. And if rook f1, then just simply rook d2. And black has completely destroyed white in this position here. So this is why he didn't play queen takes g7. Instead, he opted for e5. Right? So, he sacrifices a pawn, to basically make his attack go through, or try to push his attack through. So bishop takes c4 was played, f6. So now he's, it's basically all hands on deck. Now he sacrifices a piece. Sakaev does. So f6. And again, if he plays queen takes c4, then queen takes e5, and black is still very strong. And again, it looks crazy at first sight because look at the king on e8 and the queen here. There's no way to exploit the e file. All right, so we can learn a great lesson here from this game, is that basically if your pieces are active enough, if you control enough squares, that basically your king can sit anywhere on the board. as long as you control the critical files and diagonals, etc. Your king can be anywhere in the board. So king safety is relative to relative to the position of the other pieces on the board. I know it sounds real simple, but often we castle when we don't need to castle. We move our king when we don't need to, because we're taught just to do these things. But chess is ultimately a game of concrete analysis. And what I like about Morozevich is he was super creative, and he always pushed the boundaries as far as not really following rules per se. It was like he just analyzed the position at hand, and he tried to make the most economical moves in the position. So he didn't have to castle. He didn't castle. Right? And this variation is a perfect example of that. It looks crazy with the king in the middle of the board and all of that stuff, and two rooks, right? And all these open files, the E and D file are wide open, but there's nothing that white can do to exploit that situation. Let's go back to the game. So after bishop takes c4, not queen takes c4 on account of queen takes e5, but just simply f6. So he sacrifices a piece to try to open up the position, right? The king is just sitting there. So he's trying to do the best he can. Morozevich plays queen takes e5 anyway. Look at that. Open files everywhere, but black has so much control in the position that white cannot exploit this. Rook f5. Queen drops to e6. Queen d4 is very strong also. Queen drops to e6. F takes g7. Rook to g8. Queen h5 check. So props to Sakaev for really trying hard to get to the king. Again, look at this position. Queen g6. Morozevich is playing his tail off here. Queen e2 by Sakaev. right? Of course, he doesn't want to trade queens. I mean, he's trying to checkmate Morozevich. Okay, simply bishop e7. Now, instead of queen e2 check, which is completely natural, maybe trying to get some of his investment back by capturing. So after rook takes c5, though, queen takes h5 and rook takes h5, rook takes g7, and the white attack is just you know, a thing of the past. So instead, Sakaev did the right thing by just trying to keep the position murky, keep the heavy pieces on the board. So queen e2 check was played, bishop e7 blocking that check, rook f8 check, rook takes, g takes queen, king takes f8, bishop e4 by Sakaev, and just simply queen f7, and white resigns. Another interesting ending in this position right here with the queen and king line. And I know some of you want to see what happens after rook f1. Well, nothing happens. Just knight f4, and you see this double attack here of the knight and the bishop here on the queen. So something has to be done here. So if queen f2, then just bishop takes f1. And this is why Sakaev was forced to resign after queen f7. So that is a game, of Alexander Morozevich at his best. In his, young Alexander Morozevich. Like I said, what can we take from that game? Well, there's several things, but one, like I said at the beginning, you can use the Slav against your queen pawn openings, and then use the Caro-Kann against e4 openings, as they have the same principles and similarities in position. So if you have a job, or you just don't have that much time to study chess, consider studying openings that you can use in the universal sense. And what I like about the Slav and Caro-Kann is they are both high level openings, respected all across the world and used by top grandmasters. So you don't have a problem finding good examples. See, so that's different than somebody playing the move g3 on their first move and then g6 when they're black on the first move. You're not gonna find a lot of examples to consistently where top level grandmasters playing 1g3 and then 1g6 all the time. Whereas with the Caro-Kann, I mean, for all the world champions, not all of them, but many of the world champions have played the Caro-Kann at some time in their career. And same with the Slav, from Alekhine to, Morozevich, everybody has played those openings. So very solid. The second thing we can take also is, again, as I mentioned, king safety is relative. You notice Morozevich was not castled in the position. You see the end position right here. The queen right in front of the king on the open file, with the rook on a1 ready to swing over, and still there's nothing that white can do about it. Okay, and the reason why this works here is because black has so much control over the open files and diagonals on the board with his pieces. His pieces are so much better that his king is protected by his pieces. To put it, in a simple fashion. All right, so just keep that in mind. Morozevich was kind of like, to me, he's like a modern version of Chigorin, because Chigorin developed these type of principles like a long time ago. I mean, he has some crazy games, Chigorin I'm speaking of, where his king is just wandering in the middle, in the middle game. And Morozevich, his play at his best reminds me of those, those games like that. So I hope you enjoyed that game. I hope you learned a lot. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Also, check the links below. Please support and donate to my channel. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, there's links to DVDs related to the opening, and also books related to the opening that was presented on the board today, which was the Slav defense. I'll see you guys on the next video.